To protect and to serve has become one of the most recognizable phrases in law enforcement across the country. And throughout its over 50 years of use, it has come to embody the spirit, dedication, and professionalism of law enforcement officers. I'm Joni Sutter for Nutmeg TV. Joining me today is Trooper First Class Todd Zepp from the Connecticut State Police to discuss the Resident Trooper Program for the town of Burlington. Welcome so much.
Thank you for having me.
This is very different now. We're going to shift gears a little bit because this show thus far has been about the police departments in our area towns. Now Burlington is one of our smaller towns and they're under what's called the Resident Trooper Program.
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, some towns, smaller to moderate-sized towns, will elect to use a resident trooper program due to it being more cost-effective and still being able to receive all of the police services that are necessary for public safety and quality of life in that community. Mm-hmm. The town of Burlington, for instance, is a prime example of why the Resident Trooper Program would be beneficial to a town like them or their size. The town of Burlington has approximately 10,000 people population. They have about 3,400 homes. It's 29.8 square miles. And of that 29.8, there are 90 miles of roadway.
Now, you were in Burlington for a time.
I was, correct, yes.
A couple of years, as a matter of fact.
From 2001 to 2015.
Okay, a long time, really.
Yes.
And so when you look at, as a Burlington resident, actually, when you said 10,000 people, that's more people than I would think would be in Burlington.
It is a growing population.
Town. Yes, it is.
Yep.
It is. You can see that with the real estate and all. They would be under Troop L?
That is correct. They are under Troop L.
That's Litchfield?
That is, yes.
Okay. And so when you look at a population of 10,000, you say, okay, how many, when I go through Burlington, I see vehicles that say Burlington Police. I don't see, the standard silver cars that I notice on Route 4 that I say, oh, that's a state police officer.
Yes. So those, they are Burlington police officers. They work directly under the supervision of the state police and the resident trooper. They currently in Burlington, there are 5 full-time police officers and 4 part-time police officers. Of those 5 full-time, 1 is a school resource officer.
Okay.
So when you look at Route 4, of the 90 square miles of roadway, or 90 miles of roadway, that's combined between state roads and municipal secondary roads. And those constables do work there under the supervision of the resident trooper.
Okay, what's a constable?
They're a police officer, full arrest powers. Many of the...
Not a state trooper.
That's correct.
Okay, they're constable.
Yep,
okay.
And police officer.
Okay.
However, we don't have a police department.
Right. So when you said 5 full-time and 4 part-time, are those the constables who work underneath the trooper?
Correct.
Okay. And so those are the ones that we see in the black and white vehicles that say Burlington.
Yes.
Okay, so they have the same, they can do the same duties as any police officer can handle. Boy, when you look at Route 4, is that heavily traveled?
It is.
I mean, anybody coming down from Litchfield, Goshen, Harwinton, funneling to the high, to get to 84, it's enormous.
So when you have a population of roughly 10,000 people and you have main roadways such as Route 4 or Route 69 or 179 that all run through Burlington, and you're surrounded by towns like Avon, Canton, Harwinton, Bristol, there is a need for that public safety. Mm-hmm. And some towns that will not have that police department, the State Police Resident Trooper Program is available to them. And when you are a resident in the Resident Trooper Program, all of the services that the state police has to offer are now available to you.
That's enormous.
It is.
Really, we're going to talk about some of those benefits, but so now as a taxpayer, the town of Burlington, they are not paying for a department, and what a department would entail would be a dispatch.
A dispatch center, reports and records, processing areas, a lockup area
Okay.
for prisoners. You would have a full police department, a building. Many resident trooper offices are already in town-owned buildings, such as maybe their town hall, and they will have an office there. So it's not something where they have to have a full police department, yet they get the services that the state police has to offer.
Okay, so if a lockup, for example, let's use that. If someone were arrested in Burlington and needed to go to a lockup facility, then Burlington doesn't have one, it would be part of the state police lockup facility?
That is correct. They would be transported to Troop L in Litchfield,
Oh, okay.
where they're processed there and either released or transported to court.
So what are some of the benefits that these small towns, and you had told me before the show started that 81 towns had some kind of, were overseen by the state police.
That's correct.
Okay.
56 of those 81 towns take part in the resident trooper program.
Okay.
And each one of those towns has either one or more resident troopers working, which accounts for roughly 108 resident troopers throughout the state of Connecticut.
Now, when we hear the term resident, we think they live there, and when I go into Harwington, past Harwington Consolidated School there, I think that's right past there where the library is.
Yes.
It says resident trooper office. So I think, oh, that's where the resident trooper lives.
Yes.
That's what
That was the
you
case
think.
back when the program started in 1947, but that's not the case anymore. There are resident troopers out there that do currently live in the town that they work in, but it's not necessary, and they don't. Not all of them do that.
Were you the resident trooper for Burlington?
I was.
Okay, so you had the constables working for you.
Yes.
How does that differ, having the constables working for you, than another state police officer working for you? Is the training somewhat different?
No, the training. Everyone is very well trained. Everyone does their job in law enforcement roughly the same way. The difference between that is that they're really town of Burlington employees, but they work under the supervision of a resident trooper.
Okay, so if they had questions or concerns, or you saw an area that needed to be worked with, that would be your job as the resident trooper. Let's talk about the job of the resident trooper a little bit. Let's break that down, because you'd think, okay, you've got these constables working with you, but you're kind of overseeing everything to make sure things run smoothly.
Well, the resident trooper has lots of different responsibilities. You are still investigating all of your cases that you take care of at work. You also have to worry about scheduling for your town officers. You worry about the budgetary things such as that. And different ways to just improve the quality of life of the residents of that particular town that you work exclusively in.
Mm-hmm. Even safety messages. For example, if you're seeing certain types of crimes happening over and over, or in Burlington, there's some shops, there are some storefronts, and if there were things that you were seeing on a regular basis, or even within the residence or certain neighborhoods, you would need to educate the public.
Yes.
And to address those issues. So would you be sitting down in budgetary meetings, for example, with the first selectman of the town? Do they get involved that way?
Yeah, the resident trooper will have meetings with the Board of Selectmen and the First Selectman, and also different areas of town. I had a very good relationship with my public grounds and the highway department and the fire department. So you're all working together to, like I said before, just to improve the quality of life in that particular town.
Well, they have a wonderful fire department as well.
They
and
do.
I see that you have on your uniform a designation as an EMT.
That's correct.
And so is EMS coming from Harwington for the Burlington folks?
In Burlington, they have a contract with Bristol Hospital,
Okay.
where Burlington has 24-hour medical coverage,
Okay.
and a paramedic stays at the fire department or the fire station in the center of town. And so they always have coverage for that.
Okay. Did you do any training as an EMT with your constables? Or
They go through their mandatory recertifications every 2 years, but they do that off-site.
how does one become a constable? How does that differ from being a police officer?
It doesn't really.
doesn't.
They would apply to be a constable or police officer the same way they would apply at any other town.
Okay.
And they go through a selection process. Many times in Burlington, for example, those town officers, they're retired from other jobs, had been police officers for many years. They all come very, very well with lots of knowledge, know how to do the job, and they keep up with their recertifications.
Sure.
So Burlington does have some retired police officers already working for them.
So what we're saying is there's a lot of experience there.
There is a lot of
The
experience.
Small town charm, but a lot of experience as far as the police
Yes,
department goes,
that's
which
correct.
is interesting because when we talked to Canton, it was the same kind of thing. Some of their officers were had been attorneys, some had been fire department members, and some had been former police in other areas who have now come to Canton.
Okay.
So a similar thing over in Burlington. So investigations, okay, you're with a smaller town. You're going to have opportunities where you're going to need to do some type of detective work or investigations, and so that would fall to the resident trooper?
It would. The resident trooper can conduct the investigations, and any of the town officers that work in the town, they can also conduct those investigations. And the other thing too, which I should mention, is that when we talked about the resources that are available for a town like Burlington when you're part of the resident trooper program, they include different things like the major crime squad and criminal investigation units. If you have a more serious offense that needs to be investigated, you have the emergency services unit at your disposal for different types of incidents. In that emergency services unit, it also includes, but not limited to, canine teams, search and rescue dogs, dive teams, tactical teams, bomb technicians. So when you have that, it's just a benefit to the town. We also have a traffic unit that can come into town and help out if we're having issues with speed enforcement, distracted driving enforcement, cell phone use, aggressive driving enforcement. And we have the cars unit as well for serious motor vehicle accidents that may involve a fatality or serious physical injury. We have all those resources available to us and to the town of Burlington as well as every other resident trooper town. So it's really a benefit and very cost effective for the town to take part in that program.
Very cost effective. I'm thinking about, some of the dive teams. I'm thinking where the Farmington River is, but I don't think, would that just be, falling into the Unionville, Farmington, Canton?
Well, that Farmington River does, it travels a long way, travels through Burlington. So that, yes, that is an example where in Burlington, not only do you have the Farmington River for a recreation area, but you also have several other recreation areas in town. Many different ball fields. Many people like to fish in the Farmington River. We have the rails to trails that run through Burlington. 4 miles of the rails to trails has just been redone. So it's a very active town, and you can see why a town like that would require those police services and public safety services.
Now, you've been in other towns.
I have.
You've been a trooper for
I've been a trooper. In August will be 18 years.
18 years. Okay, that's a long time. Thank you for your service.
Okay.
But you've been in, you told me you were down near the shoreline, you've been in Litchfield doing some work, you've been at the academy doing some work, and you've been in Burlington and some other places. What are the biggest differences that you see with the smaller towns?
Well, I think that the difference is that with the 12 troops that we have throughout the state, each troop has its is a little bit different. Some troops work exclusively on the highway. You have Troop G in Bridgeport that does a lot of highway work, and Troop H. But when you get to a troop like maybe Troop F in Westbrook, you're covering several different municipal towns as well as sections of the highway. Troop L, you cover a lot of towns. Each patrol, you're covering towns. We have one patrol that runs the length of Route 8 from Torrington to Waterbury, and you cover that. But there, so everyone develops their little expertise on how to investigate different things and how to handle different incidents.
And you work as a team, you know, for people
We
who've been in those
absolutely do.
areas, certainly. And, you know, before the show started, I said, well, we're going to talk about Burlington today and what happens in Burlington. And you said, Burlington's very busy. It's very busy, you know, and I think it's a good thing that I would say what happens in Burlington, because that's, you know, that's a nice feeling, is to say, wow, Burlington is just such a lovely town, and you know, so picturesque, and everyone's nice, and you don't see a lot of trouble,
Right.
and that's a good feeling to have, certainly. But that's a direct result of having a police force that helps to maintain that.
Absolutely. When you have a police force, when you have high visibility and that you know that the police are out there, and I'll use that term omnipresence, where you might not know when the police are going to show up and when or where, due to aggressive patrols. That's what makes things go so well.
And when we were talking with Canton, and I'm just going to go back to them for a minute, because the community is so tight, they get anonymous tips. You know, they'll get an anonymous tip about a party that's going to happen, and they know ahead of time, and they go to the parents' house and say, did you know that there's going to be a party next Saturday night? And the parents are like, what? You know, and they can try to stop something that may have been something that that shouldn't have been happening, or to the degree that it should have been happening. So with Burlington, same kind of thing, that you know, 10,000 people, you kind of know.
I think so. I think that you, besides knowing people, you also, officers, they develop a bond with people as well. And when you develop those bonds, it's easier to work with them and get information from them regarding that.
Do you use social media at all in Burlington to help you with either crime investigation or alerts?
They can. There's the Town of Burlington website, or they can. Don't think that they have a Facebook page or anything like that, but they can always visit the resident trooper's office, which is located on Route 4, right behind that town hall, or they can call or talk to the first selectman, and they will always put them in touch with the proper authority to help them out with whatever they have.
Young people who are interested, Police Explorer type programs, is there something like that in Burlington? So, for example, on voting day, when Route 4 is, you know, completely backed up because everybody's going to vote at the town hall, and you're doing traffic and things like that, or the carnival that happens in the center of town. Are there programs for either scouting groups or others that?
There's a program at out of Troop L for police explorers, and the towns within Troop L's area, they have used those explorers in the past for different town functions, such as town fairs, fireworks displays, and things like that. So yes, they do have the Explorer program.
It gives maybe a better feeling for someone who's thinking about making a career,
Right.
as to, gee, is this up my alley, or maybe not so much?
Right, correct.
And did that happen to you? How did you get started?
Well, I got started, I wanted to be a trooper from a very young age. My grandparents lived in Old Saybrook, and I spent a lot of time with my parents driving up and down Route 9. And it was always very impressive to me to see a trooper on the side of the road helping somebody out. And I think that's where it came from.
So really that protect and serve, you know, I think that the theme that I've taken away from all of the shows that we've done with all of these state police officers like yourselves, as well as the local police departments, is the serve part. You know, we always think about the protect part, and we're happy about the protect part,
Right.
you know, and I thank you for your service and what that side of it entails. But there's the serve part, and every single one of you has come up with, you know, you can see it, that it's on the inside of you, that I'm here to serve. You know, that's
We are
really
absolutely
proud to do.
Absolutely.
So,
We are always there to help people out with whatever they might need. Whether, I think sometimes people think that police officers are only there to write tickets or to stop motor vehicle. Well, one of the reasons why we do that is to try to cut down on motor vehicle accidents, to try to cut down on distracted driving. But also along with that job comes with responding to your medical calls for people that are, you know, maybe respiratory distress or difficulty breathing or a serious medical emergency. We do respond all the time, and we also have criminal investigations to try and solve a burglary or a criminal mischief for someone too. So we try to do our best.
absolutely. Now you're working with Region 10 with your SRO program, which is the school resource officer.
Correct.
So your school resource officers are in the schools, not only the high school level, correct? They're in the middle school level too?
Correct. The school resource officer also visits the middle school as well as the elementary school. His office happens to be at Lewis Mills High School. However, I know that he does also visit the others as well.
And so when we look at, you know, how you can work with the school resource officer too, is amazing to me, how they really get a pulse of what's happening. And it's good for the kids too, I think, to have that
Absolutely.
open dialogue and realize that police officers aren't just there, you know, to be an enforcer, you know,
Absolutely.
that's a relationship building. So I have one quick question I'd like to ask you, speaking of driving and distracted driving, aggressive driving, that kind of thing. So many times I've seen on the road myself, I'm behind somebody, and I see them, and I'm like, they're on their phone, they're texting. It drives me crazy, and I can see their license plate number. And I know you're not supposed to call 911 when it's not an emergency call, because that's what they say. You know, so many people call 911 when it's really not an emergency call. Is there anything drivers can do in our neck of the woods, you know, the regional areas where we're driving along, we see something that's not right, either somebody who's clearly had too much to drink or is impaired in some way, and a danger on the road, you know, what do you do?
Well, I would say that if this person were to be a danger on the road, then that warrants a 911 call. You can feel free to use 911 to call. That is something that we want to try to stop as soon as possible before it escalates or that whether they have a motor vehicle accident. So if you think that someone is impaired, that would warrant a 911 call.
And then when you're when you're in a regional area, it goes to a general dispatch that would route it to the town that you're in?
It depends on where you are. 911 calls do come into Troop L as well. In Burlington, 911 calls go to Farmington Dispatch, where Farmington Dispatch then notifies Troop L, where we are then dispatched.
Very interesting. Well, it sounds like the people in Burlington just have all kinds of services available to them, and that's all brought to them by the State Police Department. And let's mention who the resident trooper up there now is, and that would be Lori Del Toro.
Del Toro, yep.
Okay, so she's the resident trooper, and she's the one who wasn't able to make it here today, but you in her stead have been very informative to let us know what's going on. So thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And on behalf of Nutmeg TV, I'm Joni Sutter. Until next time.